Right now, if your throat starts burning and your head starts pounding, you know exactly what to do. You open a cabinet, shake out a pill, swallow it with water, and wait for it to work. If it gets worse, you pick up your phone and book an appointment. A doctor will see you. A pharmacy will fill your prescription. A hospital will be there if you really need it. You don't think about any of this. It's just there. But for 99.9% of human history, none of it existed. No pills, no prescriptions, no doctors with degrees, no sterile rooms, no antibiotics, no x-rays. When ancient humans got sick, and they got sick constantly, there was no cabinet to open. There was no phone to pick up. There was just a body in pain and a world that did not care. For over 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors faced illness completely alone in a way that's almost impossible to imagine today. And yet, they survived. Not just barely. They survived long enough to build civilizations, cross continents, and eventually become you. So, what did they actually do? The answer forces us to rethink everything we believe about medicine, the human body, and what healing actually means. Let's start with pain, because pain is where this story begins. Before anything else, before herbs or rituals or any form of treatment, ancient humans had one tool available to every single one of them, regardless of where they lived or what era they existed in. Their own bodies. And here's what most people don't realize. The human immune system is one of the most sophisticated defense mechanisms ever produced by evolution. It didn't appear when modern medicine arrived. It was built over millions of years, shaped by every virus, every bacteria, every parasite that ever tried to kill our ancestors. The people who survived passed their immune systems on. The people who didn't. Every cold your body has ever fought off without medication, it did that. Every minor infection that healed on its own, your immune system handled it. The fever that made you miserable last winter, that wasn't your body failing. That was your body executing a program written in your DNA long before humans could speak. Fever is not a symptom of illness. Fever is a weapon. When your core temperature rises even 2 degrees, it becomes genuinely hostile to most bacterial infections. Many pathogens cannot replicate at high temperatures. Your body knows this. It has always known this. Ancient humans who ran fevers survived infections that killed those who didn't. Over thousands of generations, the fever response became hardwired into us. We didn't discover this. We were born with it. But the body alone was not always enough, and ancient humans knew that too. In 1991, in a melting glacier high in the Alps on the border between Austria and Italy, 2 hikers discovered a body. His name, the name scientists gave him, was Ötzi. He was approximately 5,300 years old, and he was carrying something remarkable. Among his possessions were 2 pieces of a fungus called Piptoporus botulinus, birch polypore mushroom, threaded onto a leather cord and worn around his wrist. Scientists initially assumed it was decorative, but when they analyzed Ötzi's gut contents, they found he was infected with intestinal parasites, specifically whipworm. And when researchers later studied the birch polypore mushroom, they discovered it contains compounds with demonstrated antiparasitic and antimicrobial properties. Ötzi wasn't decorating himself. He was medicating himself. He was carrying his pharmacy on his wrist. This was not an accident. This was knowledge. Knowledge that had been built and passed down over generations, tested in the only laboratory ancient humans had access to, reality. If you ate this plant and felt better, you remembered it. If you didn't feel better, or if someone died, you learned something else. It was slow, brutal, empirical science, and it worked. In 2019, a team of researchers published a study in the journal Science analyzing the dental plaque of Neanderthals excavated from a site in Spain. What they found was extraordinary. One individual, clearly suffering from a dental abscess, a painful bacterial infection of the jaw, had been consuming poplar bark. Poplar bark contains salicylic acid, the same compound we synthesized into aspirin in 1897. He wasn't just eating poplar bark by accident. He had sought it out specifically because it relieved his pain. A Neanderthal, tens of thousands of years before the written word, before agriculture, before civilization as we define it, had identified a natural painkiller and was using it deliberately.
And the same team found evidence of Penicillium mold in his dental record, the same genus of mold that Alexander Fleming would famously notice in 1928 and use to develop penicillin. We didn't invent antibiotics, we rediscovered them. Ancient humans had been quietly observing, testing, and using naturally occurring antimicrobial compounds for thousands of years before modern science gave them names. But medicine in the ancient world was never just physical, and this is the part of the story that modern medicine still hasn't fully made peace with. In virtually every ancient culture, on every continent, healing was inseparable from community. When someone got sick, the response was never just about the body, it was about the group. Anthropologists studying contemporary hunter-gatherer societies, the closest living window we have to ancient human behavior, have documented a pattern that appears again and again across cultures with no contact with each other. When a member of the community falls ill, the group restructures around them. Someone stays close. Someone tends the fire through the night. Someone brings food, water, warmth. The sick person is almost never left alone. This wasn't just kindness, it was strategy. And modern science has confirmed exactly why it worked. In 2015, researchers at UCLA published a landmark study showing that loneliness and social isolation have a measurable negative effect on immune function. Lonely individuals showed significantly higher levels of inflammatory markers, a dysregulated immune response, and slower recovery from illness compared to socially connected individuals. The researchers found that the specific gene clusters controlling immune cell activity were directly affected by social experience. In other words, being surrounded by people who care about you is not just emotionally comforting, it is biochemically different from being alone. Your immune system literally functions better when you are not isolated. Ancient humans never read this study, but they lived it. For hundreds of thousands of years, no one got sick alone. The community gathered, and that gathering was, in its own way, medicine.
So, what changed? The answer arrives in stages. First came agriculture, roughly 12,000 years ago. For the first time, humans lived in dense, settled communities alongside domesticated animals. This created something our ancestors had never encountered at scale: epidemic disease. Measles, smallpox, influenza, all of them jumped from animals to humans and spread through populations with no prior immunity. Ancient plants and immune systems that had handled isolated infections were overwhelmed by diseases that could sweep through an entire village in weeks.
Then came the great paradox of civilization. As human knowledge grew, as we built cities and wrote books and developed formal medical traditions, we also created the conditions for entirely new categories of illness that ancient humans had never faced. And slowly, medicine became something that happened to you, rather than something your community did with you. By the 20th century, the industrial model of healthcare had completed the transformation. The hospital replaced the campfire. The physician replaced the group. Illness became a private, clinical, individual problem with a pharmaceutical solution. The extraordinary power of modern medicine saved hundreds of millions of lives. That is not a small thing. Antibiotics alone have saved an estimated 200 million people since their introduction. But something else was also lost.
Today, the average American visits a doctor fewer than 4 times a year and spends a significant portion of illness alone, in a separate room, watching screens. We treat illness as an interruption, something to be fixed as quickly as possible and returned from, alone, to normal life. And we are, by many measurable indicators, getting sicker in ways that antibiotics cannot touch.
Rates of autoimmune disease have tripled in the last 50 years. Chronic inflammation, anxiety, and depression, all of which directly suppress immune function, have reached levels that researchers describe as epidemic. Scientists have a name for the hypothesis that attempts to explain some of this: the hygiene hypothesis. The idea that immune systems built from millions of years of exposure to dirt, parasites, bacteria, and the full microbial world of the outdoors are now operating in environments so sterile that they have begun attacking the body itself.
We cleaned away the things that made us sick, and some of what we cleaned away was also making us stronger. Here is the part nobody tells you. When you get sick today, and your body aches and all you want is to lie still in a dark room, you are not malfunctioning. You are executing a program that is older than our species. The fatigue that pins you to the bed is your immune system diverting every available resource to the fight. The loss of appetite is deliberate. Many pathogens need nutrients to replicate, and your body is starving them. The fever is a furnace, turned up on purpose. Your body knows what it is doing. It has always known what it is doing. For 300,000 years, your ancestors got sick with no pharmacies, no hospitals, no germ theory. They knew which plants reduced fever and which bark eased pain. They knew that the sick needed warmth and closeness and the sound of other people breathing nearby. They knew that rest was not laziness. It was survival. And every time you get a cold and your body fights it off without a single pill, every time a fever breaks at 3 in the morning and you wake up damp and exhausted and somehow better, that is not modern luck. That is 300,000 years of your ancestors surviving things far worse, passing that survival on to you, generation by generation, until it became the body you are living in right now. We didn't invent healing. We just forgot that we already knew how to do it.